Thanks for joining us. This is the new SEC podcast. I'm Randall Ledet Jr.,
I'm Hunter Ziesman.
and we're excited to talk about another week of SEC football. Week 4 preview coming up here. We're going to talk around the SEC, and overall, it's just going to be a really fun weekend.
Yeah, fun weekend in the SEC. We're ramping up. We got 4 inter-SEC games, so those will be fun to talk about. And then outside the SEC, there's some good football this weekend too. So it's like multi-box, multi-screen. It's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, it's I think we heard Dabo Swinney talking about it, and apparently he uses the multi-box, and I don't know how I watch football without it before this, but it's going to be a really fun weekend. Even outside the SEC, in the SEC, we got Arkansas versus Auburn. We got Tennessee versus Oklahoma, first time they're playing in 100 years. Outside the SEC, I mean, I'm even interested to watch Utah versus Oklahoma State, potential Big 12 champion preview right there.
The Senior Bowl to Alan Bowman and Cam Rising, like they're, 10th year seniors. No, that's a good one. It's a good one.
Oh yeah.
We only have one ranked SEC game, but outside of it, USC and Michigan, Illinois and Nebraska. Big Ten doing some things.
Big Ten's doing some things there. Nebraska's looking to emerge in that top 3-4 spot, I'd say.
Yeah.
Maybe Ohio State will play someone at some point. I don't know.
At some point, yeah. Miami, South Florida. I guess we'll get like the Alabama transitive win if Miami can beat them by more. But in the SEC, Vanderbilt, Missouri. What are you, other than Tennessee, Oklahoma, probably, which SEC game are you most excited for?
I would say other than that game, I am actually really interested to watch Arkansas and Auburn. I mean, it's probably the most strong brand name game. Two teams that have exciting play at the running back position. So that would be the game for me.
Yeah. I want to see, Florida, Mississippi State kind of bottom of the SEC right now. So one team's got to win. So I'm excited to see who wins and who puts it together. And then I've been super critical of LSU. So seeing them play UCLA, who has been struggling, that would be a good test for LSU if they can put it all together on the field. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's going to be a really fun one. And, the season's just rocking and rolling here.
Yeah. Other than that, we got Kentucky, Ohio, Ole Miss played Georgia Southern, and Texas A&M and Bowling Green would be.
That's an interesting one. That's a really fun one. I like the flow and the schedule flow for Texas A&M. Yeah. They have a good mix right now of a little bit of Power 4 independent competition and Group of 5 as well.
We saw Bowling Green play Penn State a little closer than Penn State probably thought. So that'll be a fun one to talk about. And
you know how I feel about Pavia Power. I'm excited to watch Vanderbilt versus Missouri. Vanderbilt looking to bounce back from a super close loss. They gave up a 12-point lead, and Missouri coming off a big win over then ranked number 24 Boston College. They should feel really good, 3-0. So it should be a really fun one there.
Missouri big favorites there. So I think they're, I don't know. I don't want to say that Vanderbilt's playing to the spread. Yeah. So, but I think Vanderbilt could do something. They probably wish they were at home instead of having to go to Missouri. But I guess with that, we can don't waste any time. Let's jump right into it. Game day is going to Oklahoma for Tennessee, Oklahoma. Game of the week, right? 2 teams that have been pretty high power this year so far. Not Tennessee doing it on both sides of the ball. Oklahoma defense playing solid. How are you feeling? Are you excited?
I'm really excited for this one. I love the nighttime start time. Nico has been super impressive this season, and it'll be really fun to watch Jackson Arnold as well. A lot to be looking forward to in this game.
Yeah. So Tennessee 7-point favorites, which if I remember this right, I think it's the first time in almost 30 years that Oklahoma has been down in the spread this much at home, has been underdogs by this much at home. So that's a pretty big knock on Oklahoma. So we'll see if they can cover that. They've been solid at playing defense so far this year. Brent Venables is doing a lot of work with that defense, and they're only giving up just over 11 points per game, and they already have 10 forced turnovers. So Tennessee hasn't really seen this yet. NC State's defense wasn't as good at bringing pressure like I think Oklahoma's will be. So it'll be a different look for Tennessee. I think the big story is the Tennessee offense versus Oklahoma defense, but both ways are going to be a good matchup.
Yeah, and what we see from Brent Venables' defenses have always been super impressive. Danny Stutzman is wasting no time adjusting to the SEC right now. Their starting linebacker, star NIL player. He's second in the SEC in tackles, and he's leading this super stout defense. On the rushing side, they only give up 77 yards a game. But on the offensive side, you have the second highest yards per game offense in Tennessee, and that features Dylan Sampson, who Oklahoma has not seen the likes of. He is absolutely tearing it up this year. It's him and the Arkansas running back competing for top RB right now in the conference. But Dylan Sampson will certainly pose a lot of challenges. What Nico can do on the ground and the air will certainly pose a lot of challenges as well in this game. And it'll be a fun matchup. I'm thinking in some ways it reminds me of the LSU South Carolina matchup, where a really tough defense is matching up with 3-game resume, but a high-powered offense in Tennessee who is averaging, over 630 yards a game on the offensive side. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, the two All-Stars, they got Nico, they got Dylan Sampson. Even Deshaun Bishop back there behind Dylan Sampson has been playing well. The thing that I really was high on in Tennessee, and I mentioned this when we talked about them playing NC State, is how good they are. It sounds simple, how good they are at getting guys in positions to move the chains. The routes that they run, the layers to their passing game, it puts people in positions to get first downs. They're averaging 8.1 yards per play. So for someone like Oklahoma on defense, who is a little bit more swarming, it's going to be an interesting combination if Tennessee can keep up that pace of play. But when you're on the road, taking the crowd out of it, getting consistent first downs, I think that's going to be the biggest side. The matchup there is pretty even to me. Tennessee's offense, Oklahoma defense, they've been playing well, although giving up points to Tulane, and giving up points to Houston. So they have been a little bit weaker there. The question mark is can Oklahoma's offense keep up with Tennessee's defense? So Tennessee right now, third in college football for points given up per game. They're only behind Ole Miss and Ohio State. They give up only 4.3 points per game. Jackson Arnold is kind of the guy doing it all now for Oklahoma. Passing, he's their leading rusher right now too. Don't know if that's going to be a good combination to score against this Tennessee defense that's been so stout.
Yeah, and Jackson Arnold has been kind of paying the price for being that main guy. He's been sacked this season 9 times. It's top 5 in the SEC, and he's in the company of Brock Vandergriff and others who are taking a beating. And so he's proven he can handle it. He's 3-0, but I don't know if he's ready to face the likes of this Tennessee defense, which we can't neglect and we have to highlight here. I mean, overall, this team has looked super impressive. The question I had asked myself at one point was, if they beat Oklahoma, are they in contention to maybe take that number 1 spot, or do they deserve to be a part of that discussion? Now, when you think about the resume 4 games in with potentially a ranked Oklahoma win and a ranked NC State win at the time. So,
yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Like, I can see them going to 2, especially with Georgia on bye week. Ohio State's still not really playing anybody yet at this point in the season.
Yeah.
So I could see that. You mentioned Jackson Arnold kind of paying the price for it. So far, he's been on 19 designed runs, scrambled 7 times. So they're building the playbook around his dual threat capability, but there's no one to pass the ball to. Aside from Deion Burks, we saw the injuries earlier this year, so they're kind of down some receivers on their depth chart. But aside from Deion Burks, no receiver has more than 6 catches this year. And really, most of them only have 1 or 2 catches. So there's no consistency in getting guys involved. It's great if you have depth of people, but you only got 1 guy really that's able to make it work on the receiving game.
Yeah.
I think Tennessee can shut that down.
It lends to that. There's always magic that happens on these Saturday nights, and it's a Josh Heupel returning home game. Brent Venables' first SEC game. A lot to be excited for here. Hunter, what's your prediction on this one?
Prediction. So real quick, Tennessee to win this game is the extended drives, like I talked about. I think that's their key to the game is keeping that offensive consistency. If Oklahoma's going to win this game, it's spreading the rock. Spread the offense around, quick plays, build momentum in the home stadium. I love Tennessee -7. They've already played a road game, even though it was at a neutral site. They've traveled away from Tennessee and won big. I like Tennessee 35-20.
I like that analysis. Tennessee has not proven yet this season to come out not strong. And I don't know why I use a double negative. They've come out strong every game. I expect the same here. I am in the same camp. I'm going to go 42-17. That offense is so explosive. I think it could be close in the first half. Maybe it's 17-10, and then Tennessee just puts the foot on the gas in the second half.
Awesome. College game day will be there. We'll be watching. We'll break it down after the game.
4
Big
weeks in the
game.
SEC in a row.
That's
College game
right.
day knows
4
what to
weeks.
go. So yeah.
You mentioned Pavia earlier. Vanderbilt going to Missouri. We were high on Vanderbilt early. They've tempered those expectations down a little bit in that game against Georgia State last week. Missouri did well against their first test in Boston College. Missouri's coming in as 20-point favorites. The spread, the over-under is 53.5. I really like Missouri. I know you're pretty high on Missouri and Luther Burden this year, so let's hear it.
Yeah, Vegas loves to put these big spreads on Missouri, huh? Well, last week
Yeah.
was 16 for Boston College, and and Missouri's been playing some decent competition here the last couple weeks. Like Hunter said, I've been very high on Luther Burden, and amazing player from last season, but more importantly, this season, last game, 6 catches, over 100 yards, 1 touchdown. Easy work for Luther. Brady Cook was warm, and so this Missouri team seems like they're rocking and rolling. They've given us no reason to not believe in that offense and what they can do on the defensive side. It's just a perfect culmination for that B+ grade we talked about, right?
Yeah.
The run game is solid. It's above average. The passing game is incredible. You got Dio Weiss, you have Luther Burden, and when you think about what they need to do on the defensive side. They did a good job of stopping Thomas Castellanos and forcing him to try to win the game in the air. And so they're going to have to do the same thing for Diego Pavia, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, as with the RPO offense. They run, a majority of his yards come from the ground. Last week, he had 270 yards combined for the game, which was his season high. So that will be the main challenge. But on the offensive side, as you mentioned with Missouri, no concerns there.
No, none. And, the receivers are solid, quarterbacks solid, running backs are solid. If all that's working, it's down to one unit, and that's the O-line. I think Missouri's O-line has been the cornerstone and the rock for this team. We've seen Eli Drinkwitz be really special at taking the players that he has and building an offense around their capabilities. So what this O-line is able to do and opening up this offense, Brady Cook now unpressured on 80% of his dropbacks. He's 12th in the country in total yards per game. He's only taken 1 sack this year, so on pace for 4 on the season, which it'll be more once they get into full SEC play. But last 2 seasons, he had 24 and 27 sacks on the year. So they're keeping him clean. We're not seeing the high-powered passing offense that we saw from them last year. They have 10 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns. So they're doing it on the ground. They have that dual threat, duo in the backfield. So, this game, we're going to see probably more of that running, more of that slowing the game down, less of the deep ball. Fans want to see it come back, air it out to Luther Burden, but I think there's nothing wrong with getting him in space, letting the receivers make those rack plays that, like you mentioned, Theo Weiss, Luther Burden, great at doing. Defensively solid. Vanderbilt, on the other hand, it's kind of a question mark. Like, what team are we going to get? Are we going to get the Virginia Tech team, or are we going to get the Georgia State team?
Yeah, and that's a huge question mark when it comes to Vanderbilt, and let's commend them for being 2-1. You saw the strong performance for Vandy against Alcorn State. You think your team is looking for their first 3-0 start since 2017, right? Just a stunner. You give up a 12-point lead, but they have still shown improvement. Holding a 12-point lead against a respective group of 5 team, to me, lends to some respect deserved there. A setback for them is not going to be having CJ Taylor for the first half of the game, Bernardic award list nominee. But I think the key really is just more so the keys for Vandy: slow down the passing for Missouri, establish the run in your RPO offense, and the keys for Missouri, when I think about their defense, is slow down the run like you did last game, force them to pass. That's not Vanderbilt's game all the way. Diego can pass the ball. Let me be respectful here. I know he can pass it. That's a part of their game. That's not their whole game. And for Vandy, we'll see what they can do against this rush. I don't know if they have enough to stop that rushing offense that Missouri has. Like you said, with the offense they've built, they brought in a really good transfer this year on the O-line from Oklahoma. So that's where those culminating forces, I'm going to side with Missouri. I think it's closer than 21 points, but I'm going to side with Missouri in this one. I don't know if they're 21-point beat teams up like that just yet.
Yeah. I don't I think so. Pavia, and what you mentioned, he's a good passer. He can pass the ball. He has as many passing touchdowns this year as he has fumbles. So they've created this really interesting offense that's designed around him being able to make decisions, run the ball. With that, I don't know if they have the skill set and talent of players around him to make this work. So the ball's getting on the ground. They're a little bit sloppy. We saw the safety last week. With all that, he's that all-star who's going to have to make those plays. For Vanderbilt, I think the key to the game is getting pressure on Brady Cook. If you're going to get any sort of momentum, we know that Brady Cook struggles a little bit when he has that pressure. Miles Capers in week 1 put tons of pressure on Kyron Drones. We saw this guy who we thought was going to be in the Heisman race get shut down, look lost on the field when you get pressure on him. I think Vanderbilt could do the same here. Although this is a way better O-line they're playing against. If they can do that, that's the key to the game for me, for them. Missouri, play your game. I like Missouri. I think that they cover. I got Missouri 35-13.
That's all it is. Play your game, right? If Missouri plays their game is always going to be better than Vanderbilt's. But they line up between the lines for a reason. Anything can happen. I'm still rocking with Missouri in this game. Let's go Mizzou. I have it going to be 28-14.
So Arkansas and Auburn is one where it's an interesting matchup, right? It's another SEC matchup that we have. Playing at Auburn, they've been on this home stretch this year that they're extremely lucky to have, but then they have to go on the road a little bit later. Arkansas coming in off of a win, although disappointed, against UAB. Auburn coming in with this new redshirt freshman quarterback that they're excited, who's not Peyton Thorne, and hopefully won't throw as many picks. So I'm excited for this one. How are you feeling for Arkansas and Auburn?
Yeah, I hopefully will not throw as many picks. I'm really excited for this one. This game feels like fall. Yeah. Razorbacks, Tigers, Jordan O'Hare. It feels right. And my notes say, is it a Hank Brown game or is it a Taylor Green game? That's no shade to Jaquindon Jackson. We understand what he's doing. He is top 2 in the SEC and rushing contribution. It's been such a fun season for him. This is what makes college football so great. These transfer stories, people come into new programs and, continue to elevate. But is it going to be Taylor Green getting his touch back in the air this game because his feet are incredible? Or is it Hank Brown emerging to be the new guy in Auburn?
Yeah. I think Hank Brown could be the new guy here. It's going to depend on what he gets out of the Arkansas defense. Arkansas defense hasn't been playing to the potential that they can with the schemes that they've got. Hugh Freeze talked about it this week that Arkansas is really deceptive on defense. It's going to pose a test for someone like Hank Brown, who is that redshirt freshman coming in with not a lot of experience. Arkansas giving these different looks. But last week against UAB, they got pretty cooked out of the slot. They gave up a touchdown, 81 yards. Oklahoma State scored out of that position as well. So I can see Auburn here bringing that sort of pressure, offensive attack out of the slot. A little bit easier for your young quarterback to string passes together there as opposed to airing it out downfield. I like Arkansas, though, offensively. I think that they've beat themselves a lot on offense mistakes. Taylor Green with the pick 6 against Oklahoma State that started the comeback drive. Last week, not being able to put it, any passing touchdowns together, 11 for 26 for 161. If he can start finding his guys, if the defense can perform to the level that they are, I really like Arkansas. That's running back. I think, no shade to Dylan Sampson. I think Jaquindon Jackson might be the best running back in the SEC. So if he gets another game like last week, 10 yards per carry and 147 yards, I really like Arkansas.
It's his conference.
Yeah.
It's going to be his conference. I mean, that performance was impressive. And, I agree with everything you're saying, especially on Arkansas's offense. It's looks so explosive. I think over 30 points against, over at least over 20 something points against Oklahoma State and, over 30 points against UAB. And it has been a lot of mistakes that have beat them up on the offensive side. And so, it's a better position to be in where you look impressive and you have to clean up mistakes versus looking unimpressive and still having mistakes. obvious statement, but that's where we are with Arkansas, and that's why they keep toggling up and down in our stock up, stock down to power rankings. And so for this game, I would expect them to put it together. I would expect to see on the offensive side them put up a high performance of points, 28 plus. The defensive side, my notes again, how do we rate Arkansas's defense thus far? I was really hype on Travis Williams, their DC, leading this defense, and this was a top 5 defense last year in the SEC, but it hasn't looked as impressive. And so that doesn't lend to the offensive production, setting into the game to keep a good distance, right? It feels like every game that Arkansas is playing, they are in this rubber match all game. And you're waiting for the defense on the Arkansas side to kind of get more stops and to show up more, to keep the offense being able to score more. But
yeah,
we'll see.
I think with Arkansas's defense, we've seen Auburn put up some points. They put up a lot of points last week. Hank Brown looked good. Aside from the interceptions that Peyton Thorne had against Cal, like Auburn hasn't looked terrible. But Auburn shouldn't get too high. New Mexico is second to last in yards given up in college football. So you tried out this guy, build up his confidence. He wasn't playing against, an SEC team. He was playing against New Mexico. So Arkansas defense has an opportunity to shift the narrative, I think, on Hank Brown. Force some mistakes. They haven't been good at getting turnovers. They've only forced 2 on the year. But like I mentioned, Auburn quarterback's young. He has all the weapons at hand. We know where Arkansas's holes are on their defense. For Taylor Green, against New Mexico, a team like New Mexico, they were able to string together long drives, complete huge chunk plays. The DB for Auburn, Antonio Kite, gave up that huge play, gave up another touchdown later. They were kind of picking on him a little bit until he got the interception. So I can see where there's holes on both teams, and it's kind of on the defense. Both teams have gone over the point total in the last 5 of their 6 games played. So they're both high-powered offenses. They know how to score, but there's those changes going on. Does Arkansas tone it back a little bit and play a more composed, fundamental game? And then was it just a New Mexico performance for Auburn that they won't be able to replicate against SEC teams, only putting up 14 against Cal?
Which is a fair point. When you were talking about the defensive side and both teams having holes, I thought about what Auburn was able to do with the rushing game against Cal, and shutting down Jay Knott and really keeping a pretty low rushing total for Cal in that game. It didn't result in a win, but it is the closest test we will have seen to what they'll see this week with Jaquindon Jackson. I have the same thoughts when it comes to the New Mexico matchup. These group of 5 matchups show up at the perfect time when you need a backup quarterback, you need another quarterback, and it's like the SEC quarterback, of course, they're going to be good and dominate in this game. And that's not to take away from Hank Brown's performance, because it was very impressive. But I'm excited to see it against a top team, or a top, ish SEC team like Arkansas. Mm-hmm. I'm a believer. I think he will do his part. I just think that Arkansas will do their part more. Like I would expect Arkansas fans to lead this game feeling like, I feel good about the direction of where the quarterback position is going. Like 2 TDs, 1 pick. But I think Taylor Green is a special talent. This is someone who has had success at the highest level from the Mountain West, championship. Like that experience plays a role into this easy, transcendent, progression we've seen thus far. And I think it's only going to go up from there. And so for me, prediction wise, I have Arkansas 35-21.
All right. I like Arkansas as well. For Auburn to win this game, consistency on offense is what they need. With Cal, their defense put them back on the field in positions to win the game, or at least tie the game multiple times, and then they tossed it away. Different quarterback, but I can't put all that on Peyton Thorne. He had the Cam Coleman, missed catch that led to the interception. We saw the poor route running that led to the miscommunication between the quarterback and the receivers. Consistency on offense, they can win here, because we know the holes in Arkansas defense. For Arkansas, I think the key is that defense. If they can put it together, show those different looks, confuse this young quarterback, I could see Arkansas going up. Like I mentioned, they've been over the point total in 5-6 games so far. I could see it going under here. Each team maybe having some turnovers. Until they clean it up on the field, I'm not going to rule out some turnovers. Right. They're also strong in the run game, which we know burns clock for Arkansas. Arkansas 27, Auburn 20. Woo pig.
Woo pig, Suey. All right, and so the next game we have coming up here is Florida at Mississippi State. a lot has been talked about for things off the field, but we're going to get a chance to watch how these teams perform on the field at noon on Saturday. So bright and early, get your popcorn ready, get your buffalo dip ready, all your spreads, and sit down and watch some good old SEC football here. And when you think about this game, what are some headlines that stick out to you or some themes?
Yeah, for me, it's two teams that need a win, right? That like both teams are struggling for a win. So the headline for me is both teams are really wanting to scrap for it. You have a coach who is trying to establish himself, and then a coach who is trying to keep his job. And then to me, the question at Florida was always the quarterback play. What quarterback is it going to be? For me, this question with Mississippi State is who's going to help this quarterback out because he's playing well. I think Blake Shapen is really the only consistent piece for Mississippi State. And then the quarterbacks on Florida, we know the inconsistency because we don't know which one's ever going to be stepping out on each drive. So for me, the big headline is Blake Shapen. If he plays to the potential he can, his team plays well around him, then they're going to look strong. He's third in the SEC for passing yards right now, 20th in the country. And before we hype up the Eastern Kentucky game, like some people have done in the past when we talk about Blake Shapen, his least amount of passing yards came in that game. So this was against, yeah. So this was, after that game, he's racked up the most yards. He's only one of 3 quarterbacks in the top 50 in the country to have been sacked more than 8 times, and he's taken 10.
Look, this is the new SEC podcast. We put respect on Blake Shapen's name. Blake,
that's what I'm saying.
We got respect for you. And I look, I'm co-signing what you're saying, Hunter, because I agree. I think when I'm looking at these last 3 games for Mississippi State coming into this matchup against Florida with their own challenges, I'm looking at it and saying Blake Shapen, to your point, has been the main spotlight guy. He has been consistent. The defense is where it's at. It's giving up a ton of yards on the rushing. We saw it against Scadaboo against Arizona State, and we saw it against Toledo last week. And Mississippi State can come into this game to me with no pressure. You obviously want to win, but you knew this was the first season. There's a lot of changes going on. And I would say overall, there's a shining light to point to, and it is Blake Shapen's performance, the Baylor transfer quarterback coming in this year. So on the other side for Florida, it's like the hits just keep coming, right? No Eugene Wilson to play in this game, officially ruled out at receiver. They're the freshman All-American. And you want to see more of an improvement on the defensive side. So you're facing Blake Shapen, but for Florida, their defense has given up over 300 yards a game, which is lower tier in the SEC. And so in order for them to have a chance to win the game, which is what we talk about, right? This is a prediction. This is picks. For Florida to have a chance to win this game, we would need to see a defensive performance we haven't seen thus far this season to slow down any offense. They're coming up against one of the better offenses, right? Blake Shapen's got better passing yards in some categories than Jackson Arnold in Oklahoma, who's 3-0. So think about that, like what that means, not just from a win-loss column, but from a production and putting his team in a chance to win, like getting the team within 7 points to win against Arizona State and getting keeping the team somewhat in the game when it came to the Toledo game. But that's where Florida is going to really have to buckle down on the defensive side, and the offensive side just start off better early, right? Don't put up 14 points in the third quarter against A&M. Start off better early, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and the Mississippi State defense gives some credibility to that. Like, you will be able to get some first downs, move the rock. Yeah, like they gave up over 450 yards to Toledo, like you mentioned. I will give a shout out to the outside cornerback CB1 over at Mississippi State, Bryce Pollock. He's only been thrown at 7 times this year in 100 plus snaps, and he's only given up 1 play for more than a yard. So
That's an island.
So in not having Eugene Wilson, he's probably going to be locking up Elijah Badger this weekend unless he's playing in the slot, taking some of those snaps there. So they're going to have that test for these Florida quarterbacks. We can't say one or the other. We got to say both of them, loop them into one, because we don't know who it's going to be. But what I want to see from Florida offensively is running the ball. Montrell Johnson Jr. is solid. He's a good running back. He's still averaging 5 yards per carry, and he had -7 last week. So, if they can get him going, then that will open up the passing game. But they haven't been able to do that, and that's where they struggled against Texas A&M. You can't go out there and only expect to pass the ball, especially with good defense like Texas A&M. Mississippi State, there's going to be a little bit more inconsistency defensively, but I need Florida to get the running game together and then win in the trenches. The trench game has been poor. The O-line has been poor. Offensively, not as bad as defensively. They've only given up 5 sacks this year. 8 teams in the SEC have given up more, but they've been awful at clearing up holes for the running back. I need to see Florida run the ball better to win this game. If not, I could see Mississippi State's passing offense putting up too many points early that Florida won't be able to come back from.
You would like to see more from the run game on the offensive side from Florida. We have seen some good football, I would say, from Graham Mertz. Sometimes I question why the QB controversy is there. I don't feel like he's the problem here. I know what you have behind him with DJ Lagway, and he's obviously talented, but I don't think there's much of a controversy as it is being made to be. But when you keep flip flopping the quarterback position, you're making it a controversy. On the rushing side, would love to see more from there on the ground. And Mississippi State offers a good opportunity because we saw again what Scadaboo was able to do against Arizona State and what other teams have been able to do on the ground against them. So would like to see from a keys to the game perspective, Florida attempt to establish the run, attempt to control the game clock and the time of possession, and let that build on their passing strengths. So that would, to me, would help them be in a better position to win the game for the Gators.
Yeah. For me, Florida's going to win this game, they need to step up defensively and shut down the pass. Offensively, this is a team, Mississippi State, who's been kind of picked apart by Sam Leavitt and Tucker Gleason. You hope that you have someone better than those two guys. No shade to them, but in Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. So work the ball around offensively, get some good mix between running and passing, and you should be able to score. You're going to be able to have better drives than you did in weeks past. For Mississippi State, if they're going to win this game, O-line play. Protect your quarterback. He can sit back there and make things happen. You need to protect your quarterback. Mississippi State O-line, get it together. Florida 7-point favorites. They're 1-2 at home right now, so they're favorites on the road. Over under 58.5. I like Florida 27-24.
Yeah, it's a pretty high over under, I would say 58.5 or 58. And when I think about this game, I don't know. I feel like I'm riding with Mississippi State. I'm going with the Bulldogs. I'm gonna say it'll be 35-28. I think this will be a shootout. Hail State.
Last game that we want to talk about in depth here. We're going to talk about a couple more aside from this, but UCLA playing LSU. Last week we were critical about LSU in that win. Whether they should have. I don't want to say whether they should have won the game or not because you play the game and that's the outcome. But there was some mishaps that they had that I'm sure that they're looking back at that they didn't want to happen. Now they get UCLA. They're heavily favored, 24-point favorites. This gives them that opportunity to clean up some of what they maybe didn't do great against South Carolina. UCLA not coming in looking super solid, losing their intro to the Big Ten against Indiana. How are you feeling against in this game, UCLA and LSU?
I'm feeling really good. I feel really good for LSU. I feel like they feel extremely. I feel like they've probably learned what went well last game, and they're building on it. They have a 1-2 punch with Garrett Nussmeier, top 2 in the SEC in touchdowns, and you hope to see a repeat performance from Caden Durham like you saw last week. I think I would kind of just eliminate all of the bad things that was a poor part of that game, and remember we won. Mm-hmm. We still got 16 next to our number. We have an inferior opponent coming to our home stadium, ideally, and this is probably the second worst opponent we've played since Nicholls State. So, SC is respectable, USC is good. So this should be a good opportunity for them to clean up and continue to grow upon what we've seen on the offensive side. The defensive side, Ethan Garbers could be potentially provide some competition, but he's only got 1 touchdown in the season thus far. So that this should be a good opportunity for us to see what improvements have been made on the defensive side if LSU wants to transcend to where they want to get to in terms of like a championship level.
Yeah, and the team is gritty. It's an LSU team that is gritty. When you win the game coming from behind, I'll give them their flowers, give them their props. That takes a lot to come back and win. In the face of it all, they had to go against that backup quarterback, but they put a lot of pressure there, forced some mistakes, and put their team in position to win. Against UCLA, they're struggling to score. They're last in points per game in Power 4 ball right now. Like they're 42-13 against Indiana last week, 16-13 in Hawaii. They're last in rushing yards per game in the Big Ten, only 83.5. So they're struggling to move the ball offensively and score, LSU's defense is good. Like they gave up some plays to South Carolina, some big chunk plays came out of it, but they're solid and they're getting more footing by the week. I think that UCLA is going to have a tough time with this. Where LSU is going to be solid in this is putting pressure on the quarterback. Ethan Garbers, he's not very good under pressure. He's been pressured on 40% of his dropbacks right now from a poor O-line, and he's thrown 3 picks, no touchdowns, and below 50% completion when that pressure is on him. He's also their leading rusher. LSU is going to make a bad day for him. They're going to get guys behind the offensive line, and I think he's going to be on his back a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely been some growing pains for Ethan Garbers, and he is their leading rusher. It's quite the difference from what you saw with Dante Moore last year, a quarterback who transferred over to Oregon to back up the quarterback there. But for UCLA, this is not the game you want to see on the schedule if you're trying to bounce back and get into rhythm. LSU is coming in hungry. I feel like the story here for me is more so, how much do the Tigers show us in this game to show us where they are and how this season is going to go. I think it's less about UCLA. If this game is a close game going into the fourth quarter, we will be having similar discussions to what we had this week about the coaching and, what type of team this is. But if LSU comes out and takes care of business, get up to a 24-10 lead or 21-10 lead, that'll show me that this team is, able to take care of opponents where they're not as competitive with them.
Yeah. I'm looking to see that jump from LSU. And I want to highlight one player in particular from LSU that I'm still looking to see be that all-star for them. And that's Harold Perkins Jr. Like we know what he's done, the freshman, former freshman All-American for the SEC. Came in as a linebacker. They've moved him, or they came in as an edge. They moved him into the box. They've moved him all around the field this year. They don't really know how to effectively use him, and they're trying to make him more, a box linebacker. 121 snaps in the box, 24 on the line, and 24 in slot coverage. He's getting better, and he put a lot of pressure on South Carolina last week, shutting down the run. When you have a quarterback like UCLA, who is their leading rusher, who struggles under pressure, I want to see a guy like Harold Perkins move around and shut it down. Don't let him get away on scrambles. Don't let him get away on designed runs. Have some creative blitz packages for him where he can get to the quarterback. I want to see a big game from Harold Perkins. That's where I'm looking for LSU this week.
Yeah, and that's an amazing spot to look. I mean, all offseason, everyone asks, like, are you going to have your hand in the dirt more? Do you like playing on the ground? Do you like playing in the air? And we'll be excited to see what Brian Baker can do on the defensive side with him spying on Ethan Garbers and team. So it'll be a fun one for sure.
Yeah. Last thing for LSU, I do want to mention you mentioned Caden Durham. They're finding that run game. To me, for LSU, I want to see the run. I want to see the defensively. I want to see them getting pressure on the quarterback. Offensively, I want to see continued progression in the running game. If they can do that, then they're going to look solid. We know that Nussmeier can pass the ball, although he makes a couple mistakes. The DBs for UCLA are extremely suspect. Kyron Lacey is going to be throwing to Anderson. Like, I'm saying, like, I'm expecting a big game from Nussmeier, but I want to see them continue to run the ball. Don't get up big and lose identity of your game. Take what they're giving you. So play like you know how, string together some varied drives. For UCLA, shut down that running game, force Nussmeier to pass consistently. We've seen him make those mistakes, so try to force a couple of those. It's going to be a tough game for UCLA either way, 24-point dogs. I could see UCLA covering here, so I like LSU 34-13.
I like that prediction. I also believe that UCLA's cornerbacks are suspect. Kyron Lacey's going to get his. He's had a touchdown at least in 2 of the last 3 games. Let's leave the gun celebration at home. But I would expect this game to be well handled by LSU. I'm going to say 31-10 down in Death Valley.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to all these games, and there's some other ones too that we're going to be discussing a little later. And good week for the SEC. We're opening up SEC ball. More and more teams are playing each other. We got 4 this week, like I mentioned earlier. Good out of conference schedule, so a lot of fun football for week 4.
Week fun. Week will be fun. Week 4 is gonna be so fun. I'm excited to get the quad box up again. It hasn't gotten old yet. It won't get old. This is only September. In college basketball, they say this is March for March Madness, but this is only September. Just wait till October and November. But right now, week 4, we got some incredible games. Missouri, what do you got for us? LSU, you've taken that jump. Auburn, Arkansas. Where do y'all lie in the SEC playing field? Florida, Mississippi State, like who is going to bounce back for the next game this season? And then all the other games, Bowling Green and Texas A&M. How's the quarterback position going to look for Texas A&M? Ole Miss continue to keep it rolling against Georgia Southern. Kentucky, you played your best game of the season in a loss, which you got against Ohio. So many great games that we're going to see this weekend, and it'll be capped off with Oklahoma and Tennessee in the evening.
Yeah. So let us know how you're feeling about your team. If we talk down on your team, let us know. If we hyped up your team, let us know. Let us know what else you want to hear. We're going to go after these games and break them down, break down the scores and what actually happened in them. So catch us in the next one for that.
Until next time, let us know what you think. This is a community. Let's talk college football. And until next time, again, thank you for tuning in. This is the new SEC podcast.